And as we drift along the Blue Nile with music from Alice Coltrane, do stay tuned to hear about the ins and outs of running a local record label and performing for one as we continue with Around Noon on WCPN 90.3. It's 17 minutes before 1 o'clock as we continue with Around Noon on WCPN 90.3. Looking back on the 1980s, it was a time when popular music experienced a shift in how songs made it to the top of the charts. Television overtook radio as the medium of choice for major record labels to expose bands to the general public. But as bands like Men at Work and Flock of Seagulls experienced short-lived fame and celebrity in the new video age, an underground movement of American music was flourishing in relative obscurity. Turning to America's country musical roots, bands like Bodines, Los Lobos, and the Long Ryders set the stage for today's alternative country scene. Joining me now by phone is Tom Stevens, a former member of the Long Ryders. He'll be performing this Saturday night at Wilbert's Bar and Grill as part of Maia Records Night. Also here with me is Ken Dixon, the founder and owner of that Cleveland-based record label. Thank you both for joining me, and welcome to Around Noon.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks a lot.
Tom, you're originally from Indiana, but it was in Los Angeles where you first experienced success in the so-called Paisley underground scene of the early 80s. What were those days like?
Very, very exciting times. I moved out there in 1979 with the band here from Indiana, which promptly broke up, as a lot of bands do. But a lot of musicians gravitate toward music centrals like Los Angeles to find fame and fortune, and just a switch from their local environments. In the case of the Long Ryders, we were formed. Actually, I walked into the band in early '84, but we were formed by 4 total members, 3 of which were from different parts of the country. Sid was from Louisville, Kentucky. Stephen was from Richmond, Virginia, and I, of course, was from Indiana. Our drummer was the only Los Angelino in the band, and we had a lot of really good shared influences from being in various parts, but also we had a diversity of styles and such, which melded in there pretty nicely.
And Ken, this American rock scene in the 80s, was it considered a major movement in rock and roll?
To a degree. You had a lot of concentration on dance music and other genres of music, and as you talked about the MTV promotional blitz and that way of marketing music. And there's always, while there's been this current of people that are popular for less than artistic reasons, there's always been an underbelly of people just playing music and surviving and getting their music out there. And this music's always been there. It just goes through waves of popularity and reaching the audiences.
Tom, the Long Ryders have been described as a band that were a decade too early. With the current success of the alternative country scene today, do you agree with that description?
Well, the current success is very relative. Success on which terms? As far as critical success, we always had that, as well as, for example, the Gavin charts way back when, which, for those of you who are not familiar with the college charts, we'd be in the back of Rolling Stone and our albums would be number 1. However, in terms of sales, label support, etc., I mean, we were still next to starving, even when we were getting superlative reviews and touring the world to sell out crowds.
That's amazing. Ken, Tom is now pursuing his solo career on your independent record label, Maia Records. Was starting your own label a dream of yours for a long time?
I can't deny that it's something I imagined happening or wanting to be involved with the music industry. It was more a natural outgrowth of being a fan of musicians and a friend of musicians. And the bands that I liked weren't getting their CDs put out. And that was what originally got me putting CDs out and working with people. And I think I hooked up with Tom through tape trading, of exchanging music that we both liked, like Bob Dylan and things like that. And when he described his predicament after leaving the Long Ryders and not having a record contract, I said, well, I have a small label, and it's been a very good match.
And Tom, you're known for the lo-fi sound on your records. You like to avoid overproduction. Want to talk about that philosophy?
Yes, basically, the most important thing to me is to capture a feel. I hate this cliche, but a vibe to the music, and that is not always necessarily captured through the most modern of recording technology. Sometimes the best feel is captured in your living room on cheap equipment. And to me, the most important thing to give my fans is the things that I feel very, very good, and that it is an honest portrayal not only of the songs, the lyrics, the music, but also the general feel that I want to get across through my music.
And let's hear some of that lo-fi style of music that we're talking about. Here's Get There From Here from Tom Stevens' CD, Another Room, as you stay tuned to Around Noon on 90.3 WCPN. Tom Stevens, Get There From Here, and that's from his most recent CD, Another Room. Tom will be playing this Saturday night at Wilbert's for Maia Records Night, and you're tuned to Around Noon on 90.3 FM, WCPN. I'm DEE Perry, and Tom Stevens is joining us by phone. Also with us here in the studio is Maia Records founder and owner Ken Dixon. And Ken, as the owner of your own independent label, what are your goals? And then we can talk about how you're going about achieving them.
My goals are really to get my friends, the artists' music out to as many people as possible, and how I try to achieve them is by selling the CDs, and you end up giving away a lot of them, and it's mostly to media outlets or reviewers and whatnot, but I place ads in a lot of the genre directed music magazines, and try to hook up with like-minded music distributors. The danger in that is that they don't pay all the time. My best deal so far has been getting 400 CDs into a German distributor's hand who's yet to pay a penny. It's happy, because everyone gets the music, but I'd like to get the return on it to fund more projects and things like that. It's difficult. To really do it right, you have to invest so much money to get 10,000 copies into a distributor's hands, and then hope that they sell and they don't get returned and dumped back on you. So doing it small and reaching the fans through the magazines and the fanzines and off the internet is really about the best way to hit the people that are interested in this type of music. And fortunately, with the rise of magazines like No Depression, which is chronicling this new country or alternative country, there's a lot more exposure and a lot more avenues to reaching the people that would be interested in Tom's work or Al's Fast Freight or the other bands that I work with.
And Tom, your former band, the Long Ryders, was on the Island record label, and now with an independent label. Can you see benefits for being with a smaller company? Is there an upside to that?
Yes, very much so. Smaller label tends to be far more in tune with the music, and whereas the majors tend to be more in tune with their accountants. That's it in a nutshell right there. The emphasis tends to be on sales of product. They usually, a lot of the people, for example, when we were signed to Island, the guy that signed us, Nick Stewart, was very in tune with the band, and we thought, this is great. We had been interviewed. Actually, what happened was we went to England in '85. We couldn't find a deal in California despite a good fan base and critical acclaim. Went to England. There were 12 record companies on our door. We picked Island because they seemed most attuned to what we were doing. And what happened was we signed in, I believe it was May, June, and by December of that same year, that was '85, Nick Stewart got booted out of the record company, and the new regime that came in didn't want to hear about us at all, and they were more into dance pop and whatever was the current flavor of the week at that time that they thought could make them as much money as possible rather than keeping the musical integrity going within their label.
Yeah, and that's a story that I've heard more than once in a lot of different genres in terms of large labels. Ken, who else is on Maia Records?
The current roster is mostly made up of Cleveland bands. OROBOROS, a long-time hippie jam band that's been around since 1981. and another insurgent country or alternative country act called Al's Fast Freight. And Al's and Tom are both playing tomorrow night together, and their styles of music are not that diverse, reaching somewhat the same audiences, Al's being a little more countrified than Tom is. I first started putting out CDs by working with a Cleveland band called the JANGLERS in 1988, and upon their demise in 93, still wanted to be involved in this end of the business, if you want to call it that, and incorporated Maia Records to continue on. And the leader of the Janglers got signed to a major label deal. There's yet to be a major label release, and he's spent a lot of the advance money recording rejected product at this point. So he's about to repeat the same path in a lot of ways that Tom's already been down a decade earlier. So who knows what'll happen with that whole deal? But the original goal of exposing that guy's work to other people at least clicked enough that he got signed to a major label. Now, if the rest of the world actually hears the music, that'll be a good reward for my efforts and everyone else that's been around.
And since you've been making those efforts for several years now, and you've seen at least a small profit from working out of your basement, what advice would you give to someone who might want to start their own label?
Be patient, be tolerant, expect to not get paid at times, expect to get disappointed when things don't happen the way you want to go, and just believe in the music, and that's got to be the key thing is doing it for, it's a labor of love. And you mentioned a small profit. It's extremely small, and I have a real job and a real life that I feel guilty at times not putting in as much effort as what these guys deserve and things like that. And so it's always a pull, geez, I'd like to do more. So my advice is to people that are out there playing bars, pressing up CDs is so cheap, and getting them recorded and, like Tom says, in lo-fi situations or even getting closer to extremely high fidelity is very inexpensive now. And I would urge any band to put out product and not wait for the big break, but just do it yourself, and at least people will have something they can hold on to and play for 25 years.
And Tom, we've got about a minute left. I'd like to get your advice to aspiring musicians with all the ups and downs that you've seen. What can you say?
Perseverance is the key. You have to be in it for the long term, and don't try to conform to trends at all. Play what is in your heart. Write the music that is in your heart, and if nobody appreciates it, don't worry. Things change.
I like that. Thank you, Tom. Tom Stevens, singer-songwriter, and Ken Dixon, founder and owner of Maia Records. Tom will be playing this Saturday night, as well as Al's Fast Freight, and that will be at Wilbert's Bar and Grill as part of Maia Records Night. The music begins at 9 with Al's Fast Freight, and then Tom Stevens is scheduled to perform at 10:30. Wilbert's is in Cleveland's Warehouse District at 1360 West 9th Street. For more information about Maia Records, you can call 247-4323. That's 247-4323.